This afternoon. Today's webinar is on the Incredible Years model, and we are very excited to have some fantastic presenters today. The webinar itself will cover an overview of the Incredible Years model, and then our evaluation partner, part of our team here, Dr. Elizabeth Greeno, will cover the evaluation information that we've collected to date regarding implementation in Allegany County. So just to give you a heads up on who will be presenting, we have Dr. Carolyn Webster Stratton. We're so thrilled to have her join us today and very appreciative of her time. She is the developer and founder of the Incredible Years model. We also, as I mentioned, have Elizabeth Greeno with the University of Maryland School of Social Work. Dr. Elizabeth, forward those along. You can just contact me, and my email is at the end of the presentation. And to say a little bit more about myself, I'm the Evidence-Based Practice Director here at the Institute. I have worked in the sort of the field of child welfare, juvenile justice, philanthropy, particularly with a focus on evidence-based practice for about 15 years. And I coordinate the technical assistance to the Department of Social Services under the Tile IV-E Federal Waiver. And I'm the technical assistance lead to several counties, including Hartford, Allegany, and several others, along with my colleague Amanda Miller. So who's not, I don't know if she's able to join us today, but she's also the lead for Allegany County. So I want to just begin now, I think, to pass it over to Dr. Webster Stratton and actually let her say more about herself. And again, thank you to Dr. Webster Stratton for joining us today.
Okay, hi, this is Carolyn Webster Stratton, and I'm thrilled to be here and be part of this webinar. Probably what I will do is end a little bit early so you can ask me questions as we go along, unless something comes up in the meantime that needs to be clarified. I am the developer of the program. Let's see, I'm clicking this myself. I hope that's correct. I'm going to go through the overall different programs, just a touch of comments about some of the research as we go along. Okay. Basically what I'm trying to do here is summarize almost 40 years of work, because I started with my very first randomized controlled trial in 1979, which was part of my doctoral dissertation, looking at the impact of videotape modeling as a therapeutic tool. I wanted to begin by just overviewing what is an evidence-based program, because I know the word gets thrown around quite a lot, and sometimes some people say that when they just have consumer satisfaction forms or pre-post data. And the criteria that we're talking about here is based on the Blueprints criteria for what they consider evidence-based program. It's a fairly stringent bar to reach. It requires at least 2 randomized control group trials, at least 1 independent replication, that is to be sure that the program can be done by other people than the developer and her own team. That we show change in research-based risk factors that we know to be sustainable risk factors, and that the studies use measures that are well validated, that are including reports, but also independent observations. And in our case, our observations are done in the home, in the classroom, and some in the laboratories for all of our studies. And that there has been at least 1-year follow-up to show that there's some sustainability of the outcomes. This is a summary of my life, I guess, since 1979. We have done over 35 years of research. We started in the first decade with evaluating parent programs, and then went on from there to look at the added value of working directly with the children and also training the teachers, and to see what kind of advanced effect sizes that we could get by adding these components. We did, in my own lab, 9 different randomized trials for the parenting program. These were treatment trials, so when I refer to treatment trials, I'm talking about children who came to our clinic who were diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder or attention deficit disorder. And I will say that probably about 12% of the children also would have been diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum if we were giving out that diagnosis back then, but often weren't. And then we've done 4 randomized controlled trials with prevention trials, and in that case we've been working with high-risk poverty families, largely schools that had greater than 80% free lunch and Head Start centers for our prevention trials. So a high-risk population due to the fact that they're living in poverty. There have been at least 14 independent randomized controlled trials from 5 or more countries replicating the results. We have other programs that I'm not going to talk about today, but we do have the child program. Both we've done randomized trials for treatment and prevention, and then the treatment program where we've done randomized trials, and in both cases there have been independent RCTs, not just in the United States, but in other countries as well. I will say, having put this up, that we do on our website have a very extensive library, and you can go into the library, and for many of the papers you can actually download the whole paper. If we didn't have publishers agreeing to it, we would just put the abstract up. Our goals have been to improve parent, teacher, and child relationships or partnerships, to reduce the harsh discipline at home and at school with the different programs. So these are the goals that include the teacher program as well. To increase teacher and parent social support, reduce their stress, improve the homeschool communication. If we're only showing the parent program, we're still working on that, how to talk to the teacher and how to have good meetings about their children. Outcomes for the children that we're trying to promote are increasing their social competence, their emotional regulation, school readiness, problem solving, in addition to preventing and reducing and treating social emotional problems and behavior problems. The long-term goal is to prevent conduct problems, school dropout, delinquency, or substance abuse by starting early. This is kind of the pyramid of the different programs we've developed over the last 40 years, and we're just talking today about the bottom level of this, the foundation really, the different parenting programs that you will see here. The second level are programs that can be add-on programs to the programs below. They have less research than the ones on the bottom level. For example, we're now working on incorporating some aspects of the program into well child visits with pediatricians' offices and so on. And we're also working more directly with the children on the autism spectrum. And the top levels are the child program and the teacher program. Programs themselves across, whether they are toddler or preschool or school age parent programs, the programs were divided to be developmentally based, so that at each age grade we're looking at what the key developmental task is for that age, like for the toddler age or for the preschool age. The program is culturally sensitive. It addresses and starts the very first session with understanding what the parents' goals are, what they want to achieve in the program. It is a collaborative model. It's a key part of the relationship with the parents, and also what we encourage between the parents and teachers, based on a coping model, heavy emphasis on promoting parent self-reflection, on doing a lot of practicing, problem-solve-based learning, For example, they will learn certain principles of behavior management and then how to apply them to their particular goals. The program is based on videotape modeling, so their videotape vignettes are used to trigger discussion and debate in terms of looking at kids that are having problems or ways to play with children, and then using those vignettes as a trigger for setting up practices. So you can see on the right side of this picture, it's actually me, for those of you who haven't seen me, we're doing some play, child-directed play practice together with these actual group leaders. The program focuses equally on cognitive, affective, and behavioral changes and promoting attachment between the parents and children. Parents do their own self-monitoring in each session. They make some goals about what they are going to try to achieve that week before they come back the next week. So while we give out recommended home activities to practice, we also have them make decisions about what is realistic for them to achieve and then reward them the next week if they've been able to meet their goals for the week. So there are both short-term goals and long-term goals. As I mentioned, there's weekly home activities. Group support is such a key part to this program. I did a study where I compared the group-based model with the one-on-one individualized approach, and our long-term follow-up 1 year later showed that actually our group approach had more sustained results. Parents not only learn in the group about strategies to help their particular goal or issue that they have with their children, but they watch other parents use the principles and ideas with other problems. So while they might not have a problem with lying or stealing at this time, if it comes up later, they have learned by seeing another parent address that problem. So there's a lot of value not only to the breadth of what they learn about managing children's behavior, but also just the program itself is about building support networks, healthy support networks, as much as it is about learning particular skills. Where they do this in schools, which I'm a strong advocate of, bringing the programs into the schools, we're really building community support. It's sensitive to economic barriers in various ways, which we'll talk about. I won't go into detail on this slide, just to emphasize that the program is as much about, yes, we teach certain behavioral skills, but also helping the parents, particularly our higher risk families, understand how to cope or challenge their negative thoughts and attributions about themselves or their children or others, to understand normal developmental expectations, and also just about temperament differences in children, as well as dealing with their own feelings, depression, anger management, developing self-care strategies, pleasurable activities for themselves so they can do the work of parenting. This is the pyramid. I developed this pyramid in 1980, and it remains the pyramid, which is really the backbone of the programs. Although the Toddler Program, for example, spends more emphasis on the bottom part of the pyramid, working on coaching methods, doesn't teach problem solving to that age range, whereas with the older kids there may be more of an emphasis on problem solving, and time out for teaching kids self-regulation isn't introduced until the children are preschool. So there are some differences in emphasis in the pyramid depending on the age range we're working with. We do interviews with the families prior to starting the program. There are 10 to 14 parents per group. If it's a group of parents of kids on the spectrum, we take fewer parents, more like 8. We highly encourage partners to be involved. Whether it's the grandparent or the current partner. I did a study that showed that where we had partners involved, we had better sustainability results in our follow-up. Mostly now we do evening groups because of people's work schedule, but we have offered day, but it's pretty much evening or weekend now because we're trying to really adjust to what works for the families themselves. Meeting weekly for 2 hours with 2 trained leaders, and And we encourage parents to do buddy calls each week. They're assigned a buddy with an activity in order to build the social support aspect of the program. As well, the group leaders call them weekly to check in with them, give them support for what they're trying. Food, transportation, and child care are essential to being able to deliver the program and get people there. Results have shown increases in positive and responsive parenting and reductions in harsh discipline, and these results have been shown cross-culturally in the different studies around the world that have been done. Reductions in depression and stress, increase in parenting confidence. And I will let you know that on the website there are a number of interviews from parents who've talked about the changes that they've made as a result of being in the program. We've seen reductions in children's behavior problems and increases in their social competence and school readiness. We ourselves have done a follow-up, 8 to 12-year follow-up. We have in our treatment studies, we've always had waitlist control, so they had to wait 1 year. So our follow-ups in our treatment studies did not include an untreated control group, and for ethical reasons, we didn't feel we could do that. But the outcomes, these were families that I treated and looked at 8 to 12 years later, interviewing both the kids themselves and the parents separately. The findings, I compared them to the findings for typical normative data for the United States, and we didn't find any differences. In other words, we didn't find more of our kids involved with the criminal justice system or substance abuse than what was reported in the general population. And as you might know, that age range is kind of the highest peak, particularly around 16, 17, for seeing children trying out these various antisocial behaviors. The programs themselves have had some revisions in them over the years. Where there's a little star, it tells you when they were revised. It's a mixture now of video vignettes that some of them maybe have done filmed in the 80s, and every decade we add a few new vignettes, not because of the clothing or the hairstyle, but because of new topics. So, for example, we added a new vignette on being in the grocery store because the parents suggested they needed some help with knowing how to manage that. The videos are used in such a way that it's about looking at the interaction between the parent and child. And once parents get over looking at maybe an old hairstyle or something, they pull out the principles, and then group leaders help them apply them to their goals and practice them in relationship to their child and their child's developmental level. I'm going to tell you briefly, because if we want to have enough time for some questions, about some of these programs, and not all of them, and I'll review pretty briefly, but you can find the objectives on the website if you want to look at one of these in more detail. The baby program, which is one of our newer programs, we take the children in, the babies and parents in together, ideally 6 weeks after the baby's born, so as soon as possible. There is, by the way, for all the programs, there is a home coaching version of the program. So if, for example, in our child welfare referred families, if we aren't able to get them into a group, we can also get started with them right away by delivering the program in the home. And in the state of Washington, actually, we're delivering the baby program in the home pretty much exclusively at this point, but also using it as a marketing strategy to get the parents into a group because we want to build their support system as well. This program has less randomized controlled trials than the other programs. We have a large one going on in the United Kingdom right now with depressed mothers that are being randomly assigned to this program and the Toddler Program as well in comparison to usual services. And so we're in the third year of that study. It looks very good at this point, but we haven't published that one yet. There are a few pre-post data studies, but not a good RCT that we would like to see. We're working here on strengthening the attachment, the emotion connections, how to talk with babies, how to build their language, cognitive, physical development, assure baby safety, and promoting breastfeeding. It is 8 to 10 sessions, but I will tell you that in the state of Washington, where we're doing it with families whose babies have been removed and they're brought in for these sessions, it's taking us 16 sessions to get through the material. So really emphasize having some flexibility in terms of the number of sessions according to the risk level and the population that you're dealing with. And, some cases, some sessions, the babies are crying a lot and we're spending more time soothing and calming them than we are looking at vignettes or doing practices. Again, we're working on the relationship, being responsive parents, helping babies feel secure and loved, how to respond to them when they're crying, and building support networks. The Toddler Program is for parents of children 1 to 3 years, and here we are working on child-directed play, how to handle separations and reunions, what it's like when they have to drop their child off to daycare, and beginning steps for parents to know how to help their children learn to self-regulate. Of course, we don't expect that at this developmental level, but we help them do some beginning work with how to manage that with puppets and games and activities. Heavy emphasis on safety proofing during this age range as well. The preschool program, and actually the toddler and preschool program have had the most randomized controlled trials. There is a summary that was done by the folks in Holland of 50 different RCTs that were done with these two programs, and I would refer you to that one on our website by the author is Menting, M-E-N-T-I-N-G. In this program, with these 3 to 5-year-olds, the preventive version is 14 sessions, but again, I urge some flexibility. If you're dealing with a higher risk population, highly recommend at least 18 sessions to get through the material. You want enough time for groups to coalesce and make friends and have discussions and practices. We are working on persistence, academic, social, and emotional coaching, academic readiness skills. Those are some of the topics. And the last part, I'm sorry, these little white things keep coming up, and I don't know how those got on there. We're working on more pro-social discipline approaches that are proactive, how to help children develop their imaginary worlds and promote their relationships with daycare providers or teachers. There is a school readiness curriculum that is sometimes used in schools as kind of a way to get parents into groups. It's only 4 sessions, and it focuses on child-directed play skills and reading skills with young children. The school-age basic program is for 6 to 12-year-olds. There are 2 versions within that package. One is for 6 to 8-year-olds and one is for 9 to 12, and they have separate trainings. So depending on the age, the number of sessions, the protocol for the number of sessions is somewhat different. The older kids here, we're working on their responsibilities, their routines as well. How to monitor the children and with their peer group, respectful limit setting, as well as household responsibilities and how to discuss with the children information about drugs and alcohol and computer use. The amount of screen time is something we spend quite a lot of discussion about that, how to do school homework routines, monitoring children, teaching them to problem solve. This program, Promoting Children's Success at School, is now, it's 4 sessions, but it's now incorporated in the school-age version, so you get that with the package. So it's not, and it hasn't been researched as a separate component. It's just been researched as part of the whole package. The advanced program we have used in all of our treatment studies, and often people don't know that. ever since we compared the addition of advanced to basic, we found that it made a big difference, and this focuses more on interpersonal factors for the parents, their anger management, their depression management, teaching children to problem solve and have family meetings. I think very important piece for the higher risk families, but we ask that group leaders be trained in basic first so they know the methods and process before getting to some of this, what I call kind of stickier material, but we actually have found almost no dropouts from this. It's the same group that was in basic. They want to stay together with each other and work on other family factors. Just, there is a typo here. I see it says 2017. It should say 2018. In the United States, we have trained over 17,000 group leaders, and you can see our training in other countries. Actually, we've trained slightly more in England, and we have developed from this certified group leaders, certified coaches and mentors who are able to provide an infrastructure for agencies to support their own group leaders. So research with our program and other evidence-based programs does offer a lot of hope. We are able to make changes in parent-child relationships. I've seen that now for almost 40 years. We know that we can do this. We know what happens if we don't provide this support as early as possible. As you can see in my own career, I've moved down in age to want to start when they're babies and continue to support high-risk families at each developmental phase. So that is kind of my overview. Timing-wise, I think we might have a couple of minutes left based on when we started for a few questions, or if there are any questions. I am happy to try to answer them now, or you can send me an email and I can answer them that way.
The Incredible Years parent programs are used worldwide to train parents of children from birth to 12 years. There are separate curricula for parents of babies, toddlers, preschoolers, and school-age children. The programs are composed of 12 to 20 weekly group sessions led by 2 trained facilitators. Using prevention protocols for parents of children without significant behavior issues, or treatment protocols for parents whose children have conduct problems or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
You know you're not supposed to hit each other. You're going to have to do a timeout.
The foundation of the program has to do with building the relationships or the attachments between the parents and the children. And we do that through teaching them about how to play with their children, how to follow their lead, how to nurture and love them without really being too directive, too controlling.
There. That's nice asking, Dorian.
Whenever you're using the ignore, there's a whole lot of positive for the other behavior that you want instead.
The attention that's given to the child for that positive behavior is so powerful because children want that attention so much. And usually they misbehave to get the attention. So now they figure out, oh, if I share, I'm going to get my parents' attention. It's powerful.
As an effective facilitator, you learn to tailor the program to meet the individual needs of families, and this is a really crucial part to its effectiveness.
One at a time, right?
I'm going first. No, I did.
No.
You put it all now.
Charlie?
The first meeting we had, I saw that this is something I need, it's something Charlie needs, and we weren't going to miss it.
You get one warning about that.
It was the right direction for us to head in because not only did Charlie need support, but we needed support.
It was interesting being there, seeing that we weren't alone in this. There's all these other parents with children just like mine.
And in that room, in that safe environment, we all trusted each other. We all liked each other. And we all had something that we could relate to.
And then you start seeing the changes. And you go, I don't know why it works, but it works. I'm sold.
Estás haciendo muy finito, ¿verdad?
I think the part about the Incredible Years that was most valuable to me as a parent was the intentionality of time, specifically with your child. And I really saw the difference.
Good job, my beautiful.
We were both on the same page through that, and so it united us as a couple.
We gained new skills too that we'll use for the rest of our life.
It gives you your family back in a complete way.
This program is really about positive working relationships, both for families and for professionals working with the program, and it's a collaborative process.
I have two boys, 8 and 10.
Providing you follow those key principles, then I've seen this program work across all cultures and all people from all backgrounds.
Just follow their lead and appreciate whatever they're saying. The parent responds great. They love those days. And this was the only one thing that to some of these parents opened their mind, and they were extremely happy about it.
Even if you're a single parent and you're all alone, that just spending time loving my child and playing with my child is a gift. That doesn't cost anything and can make a huge difference to my child's future. Seeing kids blossom, seeing them grow, seeing them feel confident, it's an incredible privilege.
Everybody always says, when you have a child, they don't come with a manual. No, we have the manual. The Incredible Years is the manual. It will strengthen your marriage, it will strengthen your relationship with your children, it will help you raise happy, healthy children who are great contributors to society.
Okay, and Carolyn, it looks like we had a question from Alyssa. I did go ahead and post that in the public chat. She said, you talked about the UK program for depressed mothers. Is there any literature on this, or is the study still ongoing?
The study is still ongoing. So we're in the 3rd year of that study now.
I think we can let's go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Greenow. I think
I know I could say one other thing about that study. You can go into our website library and put in the word baby, and then you'll be able to see which research studies have been done. Also, if you keep in touch with me, as soon as we get some preliminary, we'll see when we're going to have some preliminary results. But it's probably going to be a while because we're going to take them on into the toddler years as well before we publish outcomes.
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Greenow, and I'm going to be presenting for you results from the evaluation we've been doing with Allegany County in Maryland. I'm the lead evaluator for the waiver demonstration for the evidence-based practices, and I have a lot of expertise in child welfare, and particularly with parenting programs. So just to talk briefly about Incredible Years in Allegany County. So it actually has been ongoing in Allegany County prior to the waiver demonstration for several years. It's been implemented by an agency called Family Junction, and they've been roughly providing group instruction in 12-week cohorts for about 8 to 10 families. And they've also been doing an individual program for families that consists of 21-hour sessions, and it's a mix of those folks coming in-home and also to their office at Family Junction. Family Junction was receiving referrals from the court system in Allegany County and also from the Allegany County Department of Social Services. And the target population there are parents or caregivers of children 0 to 12 years old with child behavior problems, or the parents have been identified as having a harsh discipline style. Several of the referrals come from the in-home and out-of-home services departments of the Allegany County DSS. So what I'm going to present to you are evaluation results for the cohort and individual families that have been served under the waiver demonstration. So this is a sample size for evaluation. So this goes through the calendar year 2017 for the cohorts, and then the folks served individual program have been throughout the year, starting in June of 2016, but through about June of 2018 as well. So there were 31 caregivers enrolled, and 22 caregivers graduated. So that's a graduation rate of 71%, which is a fairly nice size graduation rate for parenting-based practice. And overall, you can see the number of children served, and so this is calculated only for those parents and caregivers who graduated. We were 42 children served. I'm going to be presenting evaluation outcomes on 3 research questions. So we wanted to know if there were changes in the child behavior. So we looked at a baseline, then post-test assessment, so 2 time points. The same for if there's changes in parenting stress, so a baseline and post-test assessment. And then lastly, looking at if Incredible Years participants have involvement with child welfare services post their Incredible Years involvement or graduation. So to answer the first question, we looked at the scores on the IBERG Child Behavior Inventory. So this provides 2 subscales, so the intensity score, which assesses the child's disruptive behavior, and then also the problem score, which measures the extent to which the parent finds the child's behavior troublesome. And what you can see, so you're looking at baseline to post-test. So baseline is given really right at that first interaction that Family Junction has with the families, and then post-test is given either their last session or roughly immediately after, within a month after that last session. So you can see there was a 20-point decrease from baseline to post-test, so that's what you want to see. You want to see the intensity subscale go down. And so that was statistically significant and quite a difference, again, from baseline to post. And then similarly for the problem subscale, you saw a decrease from baseline to post-test. So the higher the score, the more intense and more problematic the problem subscale. So there's a 5.4 decrease from baseline to post-test. And again, that was statistically significant, showing a decrease in parents' perceived feelings of the child's behavior from baseline to post-test. And then changes in parenting stress were measured by the Parenting Stress Index, the short form. So the PSI actually yields 4 scores. You get a total score, you get a personal distress subscale, which that measures the level of stress resulting from personal factors associated with parenting, the difficult child subscale, which measures the influence of child behavioral characteristics on the parent-child relationship, and the parent-child dysfunctional interaction subscale, which assesses the parent's perceptions of interactions with the child. So for each of these, the total score and the 3 subscales, the higher the score, the greater the level of stress or dysfunction. So what this table is showing you are the total score and the 3 subscale scores from baseline to post-test. And you can see the change score in the far right column. So there were significant changes from baseline to post on the total stress score, on the difficult child subscale, and on the parent-child dysfunctional interaction subscale. So for each of those, you can see that from baseline to post-test, the scores decreased, showing that there was improvement over time in these areas. For the parenting stress subscale, so that's the first row there, you can see baseline was 23.3, and then post-test was 26.6. That was not a statistically significant change, but you can see it went up from baseline to post. And again, it wasn't statistically significant. But what actually previous literature really tells us is that sometimes when parents go through a parenting program, it's not unusual for some aspect of stress to increase because the parents are learning everything that the new techniques and skills that are part of parenting, which sometimes cause some distress. It was not significant, but again, that's something that we've seen before in previous literature. We also want to look at the difference between the individual and cohort program. So of the 22 graduates, so the data just presented were on these 22 participants who have graduated, 15 or 68% were involved in the cohort sessions, and then 7 or 32% were involved in the individual program. So overall, there was a difference in the number of children in home with these participants. So the average number of children under the age of 12 was really more than double for graduates of the individual-based program, with those in the individual program having, on average, 3.4 children, compared to 1.5 children for those who attended the cohort program. And then we went to look again at differences in scores for the iBerg and the PSI, the Parenting Stress Index. And there was a definite pattern here. So for the iBerg, for both the intensity and problem subscales, at baseline, those folks in the individual program had higher scores, and they had larger baseline post-test changes for the intensity subscale compared to the cohort-based participants. And then similarly, for the PSI, on average, those parents who were in the individual program had higher scores on the total stress score, as well as scores on the difficult child and parent-child dysfunctional interaction subscales, and then they had larger baseline post changes. So what this really tells us are those who were being served in the individual program, they had more kids in their home with them, and then they had higher scores at baseline for child behavior and then parenting stress. So for our second research question is we wanted to look and see or conduct a historical cohort analysis. So as we mentioned that prior to the waiver demonstration, Incredible Years had been implemented under Family Junction for several years. So what we did was we assessed child welfare involvement for all families who participated in Incredible Years between January 2012 and through December 2015. And so we were looking to see if these families had any child welfare involvement measured by investigations for neglect or abuse at 1 and 2 years post-involvement. And then we also looked to see if there were any differences in graduation status. So we were able to identify 105 caregivers who had received IY between this 3-year time period. And of the 105, 71% had graduated or had completed Incredible Years. So of those 105, 98%, that's 103 out of 105, did not have any child welfare involvement in the 12 months post-Incredible Years. So it didn't matter if they had graduated or not graduated, but 98% did not have any involvement. You can see by the chart looking at neglect and physical abuse, there was a caregiver investigated for neglect and a separate caregiver for physical abuse, and there was one substantiated, which was one caregiver who had graduated. But again, overall, 98% did not have any subsequent follow-up involvement. And then when we look at the 2-year mark, we find that 100 out of 105, or 95% of participants, again, not mattering if it's graduate or non-graduate, did not have any child welfare involvement 2 years following Incredible Years. So overall, there were eight investigations, 5 of which were substantiated for neglect. And then lastly, we wanted to look at the current cohort. So these are parents and caregivers have been undergoing Incredible Years under Family Junction through the waiver demonstration. So we had data available on 27 participants. And what we did was after they were either done their involvement with Incredible Years or had graduated, we looked at 6 months and 12 months down the line to, again, see if they had any Child Protective Service investigations. So in the 6-month sample, 27 caregivers were available, 20 of whom had graduated, but there are no CPS investigations in the 6 months following. In the 12-month follow-up, so we had 21 Incredible Years participants, 13 of whom had graduated. We had one caregiver, which a caregiver was an Incredible Years graduate, that had an investigation, a substantiated investigation for physical abuse. So the overall takeaway, there's three main takeaways that we have. The evaluation findings really strongly suggest the efficacy of the Incredible Years program to change parenting stress and child behavior. The individual-based program is effective, and it seems like it's serving hard-to-reach families. So families that have more children in their home, and then families that have a higher scores at baseline for both the child behavior and parenting stress. And the historical and the current participant analysis of child welfare involvement really suggests potential long-term implications of Incredible Years, even for those who did not graduate, that there may be some long-term outcomes of Incredible Years preventing child maltreatment. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions now, or you can follow up with me on email. And I'm going to go ahead and hand this back to Jesse.
Hi, Jesse. Can you hear us? You may have lost our connection.
Sorry, thank you. I was just saying that I'd like to just overview for you the evidence-based model webinar series that today's webinar was a part of. There are 15-plus promising and evidence-based programs currently funded and being implemented in the Department of Social Services across the state of Maryland under the Federal IV-E Waiver. And the Institute is contracted to provide technical assistance to those counties implementing those programs. And so we have been partnering with counties and developers to offer webinars over the past year that provide a little bit of an orientation to each of the models being implemented. So you can see the list here on the PowerPoint, and we plan to be able to hopefully still offer webinars on solution-based casework and multi-systemic therapy in the new year. So I invite you to stay tuned for those. We have a couple minutes before we end. I didn't know if we could take a couple more questions. If people have any, feel free to enter them into the chat. Or do we want to, Tiara, can we open the lines if people have questions? We have a quiet group, and that's okay. We actually, one of the things we do is record these webinars, and then try to distribute them as best as possible to our provider partners and Department of Social Services, so that this can be a resource for anyone interested in the Incredible Years model. And for everybody registered, you'll get a copy of the PowerPoint, the link to the video, and the recording itself, so you can share that with colleagues. And if you have additional questions, we can take those by email. The email is on the PowerPoint. I don't see any questions. Am I missing anything? I really do appreciate everyone joining. I think we'll probably end the PowerPoint here. I want to thank our presenters, Dr. Carolyn Webster Stratton, Dr. Elizabeth Greeno. James DeMaio has been a wonderful assistant in putting this presentation together. So thank you so much, and thank you to all of you for joining. Have a good day.